Okay.
Hi, everyone. Today is February 28, 23. This is a webinar from ILMA USA about applying for a fellowship in the USA with Dr. Khalil Diab. Dr. Khalil.
Georgina, for inviting me. I'm currently a pulmonary arterial care attending at George Washington University in DC. And I've currently an interventional pulmonologist there, and I've been involved in fellowship interviews throughout my career. So I'm going to talk about what's important when applying for a fellowship. Can you guys see the slides very well? Everybody can see the slides?
Yes.
Yes. So
yes.
outline is how to decide whether to pursue a fellowship. Then I'm going to talk about application timeline. I'm going to talk about who can apply, how to apply, what fellowships are available, how competitive are the fellowships, tips for getting an interview, and tips for interviewing when you're interviewing for a fellowship. And let me know if anybody can stop me, please, if you have questions or anything like that. So the question first that comes up, as Joseph was with us right now, was asking is, should you pursue a fellowship? And first decision, obviously, is do you want to pursue a fellowship or not? If you want to pursue a fellowship, you have to make a decision by the beginning of your second year. And you also have to think about what type of fellowship you want to do. It depends also on, are you doing a surgical specialty? Are you doing a medical specialty? Are you doing neurology? So there are different fellowships, or are we doing OBGYN? There's different fellowships for each specialty. So type of fellowship, do you have a deep interest or fascination for a particular subspecialty area? Does deep mastery of a more limited content area appeal to you? Because some people might say, we like to do everything. Would you be satisfied clinically to care primarily for patients with problems within a particular subspecialty area? If a subspecialty is primarily consultative, does that role appeal to you? And then, are you interested in performing procedures associated with some subspecialties? And let's say you want to do an intensive care medicine subspecialty and you hate doing central lines and art lines, and maybe you should not be doing a subspecialty intensive care in that case. Are there lifestyle or financial advantages to a subspecialty career that are important to you? Let's say it's important for you to pay back your medical school loans or help your family members, and you might say, I want to pursue a fellowship that pays me more money down the road than a fellowship that does not. Or are you looking for a good lifestyle? Then you might say, I don't want to do critical care medicine, or I don't want to do trauma surgery or interventional cardiology, let's say. Tips before you decide: contact a number of role models and ask their opinions. Think about the lifestyle associated with the fellowship. It's a major life decision. And then look at statistics, competitiveness of the different fellowships. But that's also important, especially if you're applying directly from Lebanon, then it's going to be more important to do that. And you can find a lot of these statistics of like percentages of people accepted, let's say, per fellowship on the American Board of Internal Medicine website, or the American Board of Surgical Specialties website, or other board websites that you can look at. So you can find all these on these websites. When to make a decision? Make a decision by the beginning of your second year. We're getting a lot of people getting admitted right now. Then we've got start pursuing rotations in your subspecialty of interest. Why is it important to make a decision by the beginning of your second year of specialty? Because the application process, I'll show you, begins here and at the beginning of your third year. So you have to be ready for that as things pass by. But in Lebanon, it might be different because you might want to do an extra year of whatever over there before you apply. So make sure to make your decision a couple of years or a year at least before you start your application process. Start pursuing rotations in your subspecialty of interest. Look for a mentor and start research projects depending on what fellowship you're applying for. Try to do electives in the US. And it's always better to do the elective at a place you might be interested in, or a place that might end up taking you, because then they know you better and they can push for accepting you at that place. If you look at the application timeline over here, I just wanted to show maybe, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but let's say you go to the medicine and pediatric specialties match, let's say in 2023, the match opened on August 24, 2022, and rank order list opened up on 9/28/2022 or 28 September 2022. November 2, 2022 was a quota change deadline. Rank orders that was 16 November, and the match was 30 November. So basically, for you to start in 2023, you would have matched in November 2022. So that's why you need to start. You're thinking about what you want a year before, so you can have time to meet people, rotate in the rotations that you want to rotate in, and get the letters that you want, and also get like research projects, especially for more competitive specialties, get your name on some presentations, publications related to your specialty. I don't know as much about surgery, but if you look, for example, at surgical critical care, same thing. June 2022, rank order list 13 July, and actually it's even before the matches on September 7th, let's say. So all of them are early on during the year. Some of them might be slightly different, but a lot of them are early on during the year that this happens. Colon and rectal surgery, August 10th, and then match is October 26th. So all of them are within the same time range, except for example, if Joseph, you were here with us, you're applying for epilepsy clinical results, that might be better because the match doesn't happen until May 17th. They have a lot more time in that case to be able to start in 2023. So some of them are different. So you need to look at what you want to do. Let's say headache medicine, you look at it too. It's a much earlier match. If you look at headache medicine, the match is August 3, and that's a neurologist specialty. So you need to know what specialty you're applying for and make a decision beforehand. Before you apply, always ask people you know about the different programs and the recommendations. Because the last thing you want to do is go to a program that's, let's say, that burns you out or that treats its fellows very badly. You might not want to do that. And you can look at the FRIDA AMA Residency and Fellowship Programs database on ama-assn.org. So now when you apply, like what do program directors and programs look at? Because there's a couple of points with the application process. One is you fill up your ERAS application for the most part, right? You submit it, and it's going to have information about your awards that you've received, your medical school, what research you've done, what presentations you've done, your personal statement, your recommendation letters, and multiple other things. And so basically, before they invite you for an interview, program directors and some other people in the program, they just like look at the applications, and they might actually throw quite a bit away. Oh, this no, and then they invite you for an interview afterwards. So you want to make them invite you for an interview, right? I mean, in some cases, when you're a foreign medical graduate, you can't make them. Some programs might say, we have a federal government grant, like a T32 grant or something like that, and therefore we don't want to take fellows who have J1 or H1B visa requirements. Some programs might say we only take J1 visas, we don't take H1B visas. So sometimes some of the stuff might not be in your hands, but also if you know beforehand which programs do that, you might not want to apply to them because you don't want to pay the money to apply to a program that's not going to even consider your application. So an important part of your application is your personal statement. Take time to write it. In the introduction, try to share a story of, always do it like a story. Don't like do general stuff. Try to share a story of why you chose your specialty. Don't dwell too much. In the body, discuss your achievements in research, education, clinical care that led you to choose the fellowship. In conclusion, what do you plan to do after your fellowship? Typically, ideal length about 650 words max. I can tell you, like when people review, they don't have that much time. You have many applications to review. You're not going to be reading a book. So try to make it as concise as possible, but at the same time, try to make it as impactful as possible in these concise terms. So take your time, get people to review it for you, and make sure it's impactful. And then, of course, as we said, get feedback from others. So personal statement tips is experience, talk about your experiences, research, tutoring, what you've done, classwork. Volunteering is important. A lot of people in the US like to see volunteer work that's been done, that's impacted the community that you've been in. Meaning is your effectiveness as a researcher, demonstrated leadership or other qualities that your target program is looking for. Skills, do you have any transferable skills, any technical knowledge, any interests or passions? And that's all important as part of the personal statement. Things looked at closely. Some programs, they look at your medical school, what medical school you've been at, the residency program you've been at before, and whether they know it very well, whether it's impactful. Then awards sometimes are important, such as, and these are present in some of the Lebanese medical schools, such as Alpha Omega Alpha or Gold Humanism Award or others. As I said, volunteer work. So try to, and I know in Lebanon you have a lot of opportunities, such as working at LAU. Let's say they have a clinic that serves underserved populations. At AUB, you can work in the OPD or in other clinics that serve underserved populations. And I think all the universities have clinics that serve underserved areas. So these are important piece of experience, research experience. Try to do either like prospective studies or retrospective studies. Try to present at national or international conferences. And in Lebanon's case, I would say try to present at international conferences such as in the EU or the US, just to be more impactful, and try maybe to get 1 or 2 publications under your belt, and peer-reviewed journals, publications, presentations at national conferences. And then very important is like your residency program director recommendation letter. Make sure you get a very good letter from your program director. Invaluable, get letters from people you know well. Do not ask people who don't know you well for a letter. For example, I'll give you an example of we had a student who rotated with us over here last year, and he was asking I talked to him afterwards, he was asking for letters from every single person he saw. And I told him that's probably not a very good idea, because if somebody doesn't know you well, they're going to write you a very average letter. And if people see that you have an average letter, then they're not going to look at your application. They might say, oh, why does he have an average letter? Or why does she have an average letter? We're not going to take them. So make sure you don't have to get 10 letters. Make sure you get 3 or 4 excellent letters rather than get like 10 letters that are not as important. You know what I mean? So that's important. Remember, a bad letter goes a very long way. I mean, I can tell you, like, seeing program directors review letters, they review it, and they're like, this guy has a bad letter from this and this person, therefore we're not going to rank him, or whatever, something like that. So that's important. Before interview day, brush up on your CV and study it closely. And then, sorry, I'm just answering something here. Brush up on your CV and study it closely. Be prepared to answer questions about it, because you don't want to be writing stuff that is not important, or stuff that is not in the stuff, like you don't want to be writing stuff that you didn't do. Like if they start asking questions, they can figure out quickly that you're making stuff up. Prepare to discuss your reasons for choosing the fellowship. Prepare for some knowledge-based questions. Prepare for questions about leadership skills. That's like getting very common, where like you're interviewing and then the program director gives you a list of questions to ask during your interviews, and then they want to rank the applicants based on how they answered these questions. Let's say, such as what kind of impact have you made in your community, let's say in this and this NGO, and how did you practice your leadership skills in that. Short and long-term career goals. What do you want to do after you finish? Are you going to specialize further? Are you going to be in academics? Are you going to be in private practice? Do you want to work for NGOs, stuff like that? And then some stuff is important too, like hobbies. Do you have any hobbies? Prepare to discuss your hobbies. Prepare to discuss your volunteer work and extracurricular activities. These are also important things they look at. Tips for interview day: rehearse. These days, most interviews are done on Zoom, so be aware of how your head and shoulders are positioned in the frame of your computer's camera. Be aware of the background, which should be neat, uncluttered, not distracting to interviewers. Be careful in the interview with hand gestures, particularly because your connection may freeze and thus hold your image in an awkward position. Be patient with yourself and with your interviewers. Yeah, one thing I've noticed, some applicants that, let's say, piss me off sometimes. I can tell you, like, some questions you might not want to ask is like when you start like asking, let's say, your interviewer about their, like, where did you study, what did you do, how did you get to where you are, what are stuff like some very pointed questions sometimes can piss people off, so you don't want to do that. You types of medical fellowship interview questions, knowledge-based questions, as we said, behavioral scenario questions. They give you scenarios such as, one of the questions we always ask, like, you've been on a like let's say you've been on a team with a upper level resident, and you believe, let's say you believe that the resident is doing something that may impact your patient negatively. How do you go about convincing them otherwise, or how do you go about talking to them about this? That's one thing. Personal questions, context questions, extracurricular questions. Yeah, personal, I mean, they can ask questions about yourself, but nobody has the right to ask questions that say, are you married, or is your wife, you know what I mean? Like stuff like that. Like, I mean, they can ask you what's your connection to the area you're applying to, but they cannot ask you, like, let's say if you're a woman, people cannot ask you, are you pregnant, you know, or something like that. Like, that's not allowed. That's a question that's not allowed to be asked. Most common question, tell us a bit of yourself. What are your most significant strengths and weaknesses? How will you contribute to our fellowship program? Why did you apply for this fellowship? What do you know about our institution? What experience do you have in the fellowship subspecialty? So always prepared to, like, when you're applying to somewhere, people are going to ask you, why did you choose to apply to us? Is it the city? Is it the program? Or don't like just tell them, oh yeah, I'm a foreign medical graduate, I applied to 100 programs, and you're one of the programs I applied to. Just make a story of, make a story of why you're applying to that program. What experience do you have in this specialty? What are your career goals? How do you handle conflict? This is an important one they ask. That's the scenario I brought up earlier. Do you have any questions for us? And always make sure to have some questions, like, about the program. Like, the worst is to say, oh, I don't have any questions, thank you very much. Like, just ask, what's the research experience in the program? Or do you give a lot of education sessions to the fellows? Stuff like that. That's stuff that could be asked. So questions I can give you: what's the daily workflow like? What's the schedule like? How do you evaluate my performance? Are there any research opportunities? What type of training will I receive? How many research months do I get, and can I participate in clinical or academic research? And that all depends also on what you want, right? If you're somebody who's more clinically oriented, you might want to go to a fellowship program that has more clinical months. If you're somebody who's more research oriented, let's say you're interested in basic science research or more like research opportunities, you might want to go to a program that gives you 12 to 18 months of research in that case, because that will allow you to build your research portfolio, maybe get some grants to be able to stay in academics in that case. Are there clinical rotations? What are they? What type of patients will we see? For procedure fellowships, what type of procedures will I be able to perform? Let's say I know pulmonology or whatever cardiology, people can ask, like, can I do all kinds of bronchoscopies, or do you have an interventional pulmonary fellowship and I can't do any of the advanced procedures? So that's also maybe important to you. And then after your interview, make sure to send thank you letters or emails to programs you're interested in. Only like programs you are interested in training at, because the last thing you want to do is, I mean, it depends on you, right? If you're like somebody who says, oh, I want to just come to the US, do a fellowship, whatever the case is, then you might want to rank all the programs. But if you go interview at a program that you like hate like crazy, like, you might not want to rank it because you might get in and then you're stuck. And I'll tell you how you're stuck in that case. Your preferences should be based on where you will feel happiest: training, location, colleagues, etc. After the match, you have to sign and return a letter of acceptance. You have to sign and return the appointment contract. And then you have to complete an application for a training license. There's types determined by programs and state medical boards. You have to address any ongoing needs with respect to visas. Applicants for German visa should regularly check OASIS with the ECFMG. You have to complete any pre-training activities, example, drug screens, background checks, medical checks, stuff like that prior to joining your program. Of course, for us in Lebanon, like, you need to get a visa interview early on, so you're not delayed start. What happens if I decide not to enter the program? This is completely not recommended. So you can request a waiver for extenuating circumstances. Let's say your family got sick, your parents got sick, something like that, and you need to stay with them, then this might be extenuating circumstances for you. The thing is, you cannot engage in any other interviews or commitments until the waiver is granted. If your waiver is not granted, you need to go to the program. If the program director says, I'm not going to grant you a waiver, you have to go. And you are committed with the program for the first, so it's not that bad, but you're committed for the program for the first 45 days, and then potentially you can try to switch programs or do something else, but it's always looked at negatively when you're only did 45 days in one program. So you're stuck for a while in that program. Are you allowed to switch later? Yes, you can switch programs a year or two down the road for sure. So conclusions, first ask yourself, do I want to do a fellowship? What type of fellowship fits me best? Start early, as we said, build a good application, interview well, rank appropriately. And the one thing to remember is the match is a commitment. So this is my invitation, and the meeting is being recorded. Or I'm going to keep it on recording now because people might ask questions at this time. All right, any questions?
I just have a question, Khalil, question or comment. If students or residents are interested in contacting ILMA USA members for help with the research applications or questions, they can contact ILMA at, I'm going to put it in the chat, at exchange at ilmausa.org.
Yeah, that's a good point. And hopefully, Shadi probably will have this recording on the website, maybe, right? We'll start putting them on the website, maybe.
Yes, we will. We will post it on our
Yeah.
One of our pages on the website. Yes, as a resource.
Joseph, Anthony, Laura, Michael, any questions?
No, thank you.
Yes, please. I'd like to ask a question.
Yeah.
So if someone says does their residency in Lebanon, then continues fellowship in the US, can they practice in the US later on?
Yes, that's a good question. Actually, a lot of people, what they end up doing is they tend to repeat residency to get board certification. But typically, a lot of the boards can give you, like, instead of doing, let's say, internal medicine, instead of doing 3 years, you might be able to get away with 2 years. You can get a waiver to do 2 years of residency instead of 3. The other way of doing it, I know some people who've done it, is by working in an academic medical center. And I think you need to work in it for a number of years, like 5 years or something. I'm not 100% sure what the number of people. I have some friends who have done that for like 5 years or something like that, and then you would be eligible for the boards at that point in time. So if you work in an academic medical center after you're done for a number of years, then you can potentially not have to repeat your residency in that case. Okay, but of course, the right has advantages and disadvantages, because the advantages are that you don't have to repeat residency. The disadvantages are if you're not happy in that place, you're stuck in it for 5 years until you are able to do your board certification at that point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions, we thank you very much, Dr. Diab, for this presentation, and it will be posted online.